Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Notwithstanding the Charlotte political solar flare in the mayor's office, the challenge specific to jobs, to training, to trying to fill the skills gap and making the Carolinas more competitive and getting the mojo back, so to speak, is still very much front and center about what most in leadership are concerned and talking about right now. Happy spring and welcome again to the most widely watched source for Carolina business and public policy. I'm Chris William, and this time Charlotte Chamber Chief Bob Morgan is back and Midlands Technical College boss Dr. Sonny White. We wade into the region's top issues in just a moment.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. This edition of Carolina Business Review was recorded March 28, 2014. On this week's program, Bob Morgan, President of the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce, and Dr. Sonny White, President of Midlands Technical College. And now, here's Chris William.
Hello, welcome to our program. Gentlemen, welcome. Sonny, nice to have you here.
Good to be here.
Bob, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
You know, Bob, you got a Charlotte mayor who was under indictment. Unbelievable headlines for Charlotte. You had very contentious airport issue in Charlotte. It was very politically polarized. And you have, deserved or not, you had many in North Carolina saying that North Carolina brand is tarnished and it's because of what the Republicans did. Whether that's true or not is a different story. But when you've got these kind of dynamics out there and you're in your business or you're in any kind of business that is a progressive with a small p in North Carolina, how do you sail it into that headwind?
Chris, for more than 2 years now, we've been dealing with what I call the curveballs coming from the public sector. Some of it is the red state, blue city dynamic. We've seen some levels of dysfunction at the local level that have surprised us and have been unlike what we've seen before. This week, something we've never dealt with before. The irony is, let's talk about some other things in the news this week. We've had MetLife to cut a ribbon and tell us that for 1,300 jobs, they've attracted 77,000 resumes of people in the financial services industry who either live here now or would like to move here for those jobs. Electrolux opening their R&D center. We're going to see the Veterans Administration open a $150 million hospital this afternoon with 550 jobs to go with it. So there's all kinds of evidence that we're on the verge of an explosion of investment in Charlotte, and that the momentum is very positive, notwithstanding the challenges that are coming from the public sector.
So do you think, and by the way, just to correct myself, the Charlotte mayor of this taping was not indicted. He was arrested, but I want to make that important distinction. I was wrong on that. So I guess your point is a lot of these great things get buried into what makes headlines. Is that fair to say?
Very fair.
Yeah. Dr. White, welcome again to the dialogue. You know, you think about, I do not want to spend a lot of time on this, but when you think about the specific moments in time in the Carolinas, at least contemporary history, when there were alleged corruption charges, and you really got to think hard. I mean, we've had some bad characters maybe taking the political stage from time to time. Do things like this, are these anomalies? Do you think there's any particular, sinister plan, not plan, but is there some type of trend here that we're not aware of?
Chris, I've grew up in South Carolina, lived in North Carolina and South Carolina most of my life, traveled the global world. No, I don't think there's any sinister plan here. And just like Bob said, in South Carolina, now we've had some of the same things over the last few years, but we see more jobs being recruited to South Carolina at the same time, just like Bob was talking about the Charlotte area, while these things are going on. So to me, it really hasn't had that much effect upon the economic development and growth of jobs in the states.
So when we talk about jobs, the single biggest issue we hear a lot about the skills gap. Folks will say, wait a minute, the unemployment rate is still fairly high. Why can't you find workers? Employers will say, and I know this is not lost on you, either one of you, workers or employers will say, we can't find the correctly trained or talented worker that we need. What is that all about?
It's really, it's not just a problem for North and South Carolina. It's a problem for our nation. When you look at the various areas, especially areas like advanced manufacturing, and I know you hear all the time about reshoring, and we in the Carolinas were big for so many years, especially in textile manufacturing. But some of that's gone away. That which remains are very high tech now. But you see the reshoring of manufacturing coming back from some places in the Far East that they went to. And so what's happening is this is coming back, and it's not like it was 20 or 30 years ago. Now it requires certifications and skills beyond high school. 65% of all the jobs now in the United States require some kind of an education, some kind of a certification beyond high school. My parents both worked in the textile industry. Both of them were high school graduates and did very well. But the times have changed. Now, it really is the number one issue in terms of making sure these jobs come back is human capital. Where is the skilled workforce? And making sure. The states that are going to do the best, in my opinion, are those that identify the workforce, train the workforce, and have that skilled workforce in order to attract companies here and to grow companies within those states.
So do you see in North Carolina and also South Carolina, Dr. White, do you see legislative priorities reflecting this work skills gap, or is this something that those of you in the technical college system or in North Carolina, the community college system, are going to have to fight tooth and nail to moved the priority up?
Chris, there's a little bit of a contradiction here, right? It is the fact that our population, our workforce is large, it's growing, it's increasingly young and diverse. That's one of the top 2 or 3 reasons that any company will move to the Charlotte region and to the Carolinas. The contradiction of that is that it's manufacturers in particular who have those very particular skill sets that they're looking for, and those are in shortage. They tend to be around some of the STEM type issues, and I think there is a focus coming up, certainly out of the North Carolina General Assembly, on meeting those needs. But it's you put a group of manufacturing CEOs in town, it's great that our population is growing, but they'll tell you, look, if we can't match the skills with the jobs of today and tomorrow, those jobs are going to have to go elsewhere. Whatever your tax rate is, whatever the other advantages are, workforce is everything.
Is that a legislative priority?
It is a legislative priority, and Governor Haley has made it a priority. Just to give you an example, 2 years ago, she called me up one day and she said, Sonny, Michelin is going to be expanding in Lexington County, and they're going to be building a new plant in Anderson County. Said, you've got to provide the workforce for those folks, because the number one key position they're looking for is this reliability technician, which is a position that requires a certificate, a 2-year associate degree, not necessarily a 4-year degree. And I told Governor Haley, I said, we can do it, but we've got to do it together. So Michelin worked with us. We worked with the local school districts in Lexington County, South Carolina, to establish a sustainable pipeline of students. But it took the company working with the local technical college, in our case, Midlands Technical College, but Anderson and the college up there would have to do the same thing, working with the local school districts to have the teachers and counselors understand about this, and then working with the parents and all, because in many cases, like Bob said, we have to change the perception about what advanced manufacturing and what these jobs are. They're great jobs, but many of the many of the parents and the students and even the teachers and counselors don't understand about this. And so we have to change the perception. So we're putting a great effort these days into changing that perception. However, no doubt about it, in South Carolina, the governor and the legislature is putting priority. We're getting a little bit, at least in the House budget in South Carolina, there's some recurring funds for the technical colleges in South Carolina for STEM training again.
And let me, before we go too far down this rabbit hole, let me come back to something. You know, you both know the company 3D Systems. Very hot topic, very hot technology right now. They're located in Rock Hill, South Carolina. They had a relationship with York Technical College. Dr. White, I'm not asking you to speak for York Technical College, but the CEO is on this program. And he said, we pulled out of a relationship with York Technical College because and his quote was, let me just sum it up. He said, we think differently. They couldn't give us the training that we needed done. So the question I'd like to ask both of you is how do you get that interface right? Are educators really listening to what businesses say, and what our businesses say that is important to hear? Bob, I'll start with you, and then I'll give you a chance to answer that.
Well, in our case here at Central Piedmont Community College, and the poster child example is the Siemens, the German-owned company, their partnership with Central Piedmont. President Obama has referenced it twice in his last two State of the Union addresses. Central Piedmont has listened to Siemens, and as a result, they've sent trainers over to Germany to learn the Siemens method. Now those folks are training people to help Siemens grow from 1,000 to 1,800 people here in Charlotte. I think Central Piedmont is a strong competitive advantage in listening. You'll often hear me say there's no institution in our economy that has a closer ear to the needs of the workforce, and when they hear what those are, they try to develop programming to meet those needs. I think we're seeing that model. UNC Charlotte is trying to play off of that same model and what they're talking about around big data. How do you marry a school of business with the College of Computing and Informatics to create programming that becomes very real, in that case, not just to one particular industry, but big data is something that can cut across financial services, healthcare, transportation, logistics, manufacturing, whatever it is. And so I think the challenge for higher education generally, and hopefully in the cases I mentioned we get it right more often than not, is just that. How to listen to what those needs are and then develop the programming so that it works for both.
So how do you listen? How do you know what business really wants, Sonny?
Well, first of all, I spent 31 years in the global chemicals, pharmaceuticals business. I ran two divisions of Ciba Geigy and Ciba Specialty Chemicals. So I've been there, done that. I think part of the answer to this, especially for community colleges and technical colleges going forward, is boards of trustees and commissions are going to need to look for leaders, for presidents of those colleges who know how to run these colleges, but also have private sector experience.
Is that a different skill set now, to be the CEO of a technical college?
I definitely think it's a different skill set. During the first 30 years of community and technical colleges, most of the folks came out of the academic, came with an academic background. I believe today, because I believe the number one thing that community and technical colleges have to do is respond to the hiring customer in your service area. Therefore, my belief is, and I know our board of trustees is dedicated to this, to finding leadership who understand and can listen and relate to and talk to the business leaders about what their needs are, and then translate that with the internally, academically, into programs that can meet their needs. So my answer to that is for commissioners and boards of trustees to look for leaders who understand what the customer needs and then is able to translate that into the programs to meet those needs.
You know, why don't I ask the question this way? If we use the metaphor for oxygen for money, are the technical college systems or the community college systems getting enough oxygen? And you know, everybody says we don't have enough money to fix the problem. But you know, at some point, it really does become punitive so is this a money issue or is this a policy issue?
I don't think it's a money issue myself. Certainly, we could all argue that we get less than we used to. But, hey, I understand where state legislatures are coming. You know, they're having to deal with health care. They're having to deal with all kind of infrastructure issues and all. So I'm not saying you've got to fund me more. I, as a president, think I've got to be more entrepreneurial. I've got to be more innovative. If I can help that business, if I can help Michelin, if I can help Siemens, Siemens is going to help me. Michelin's going to help me to fund this college. We've got a business incubator. We got all kinds of things, and I know Tony Zeiss at Central Piedmont is very innovative too. Today, you've got to be innovative as a leader of these technical community colleges. You can't just go down to the legislature with your hand out and expect more funds.
Right.
And Chris, I don't know that this applies, I suspect it does, to the community college system. In my business at the Chamber, there are things we were doing 10 years ago that were cutting edge. Today, they're not. And so when you're trying to identify what are the new things you need to be doing, part of leadership is also jettisoning that which used to make sense 10 years ago. And so that's one way to manage the resources. I think there's another broader issue here, too. Perhaps we're part of a culture in the Carolinas that's so focused on recruiting industry from the outside. I think part of this is just good old-fashioned listening, and it falls into economic development under retention. Not just the community colleges, not just universities, chambers of commerce and economic development organizations. As we are in New York, Europe, Asia, recruiting more companies here, we also need to be out listening to the folks who are already here, listening with a critical eye. What's keeping you from growing and investing more? What's keeping others in your industry from being here? And how can we as a community, nonprofit and public sector, deploy resources to help serve you? And it means doing that constantly and almost developing a culture of listening. And we've done some of that. You know, that kind of mindset comes out of the Northeast and Midwest, from communities for whom recruiting new in is really not an option. And yet, while we're fortunate to still have companies looking at us, I think we need to go ahead and develop that part of our culture, that as we recruit others, we're listening to those who are here already.
And Bob is right there. Just an example, we had a customer in this week that's located only half a mile from one of our campuses at Midlands Technical College. And they came in and said they've got 20 open positions now. They got 70 open. They're going to have 70 positions that they're going to grow over the next 4 years. Here's what their need is. We've got to meet that particular need. At the same time, we know that in both Carolinas, most jobs come from small businesses. And so we've got to listen to those small businesses. And as I said earlier, we've got a business incubator, accelerator on one of our campuses where small businesses that come out of incubators in the state can come and accelerate their business and grow their business, grow the number of employees, and our students can get those jobs. So it's not only recruiting the companies in and providing the workforce, but it's expanding workforces there and listening to those customers and how do we provide the workforce to meet their needs. And then how do we be very entrepreneurial and be a part of that entrepreneurial effort that grows businesses within our states, and how do we respond as community and technical colleges to meet that need?
Let's go upstream a little bit, and let's talk about the students as a raw material. So when your raw material comes into the system, there are challenges, there are charges that raw material is not school ready. How do you as an educator, Bob, how do you as maybe a referee in a town like Charlotte, how do you make sure that K through 12 is doing the right things so there's some connectivity and it's really kind of getting spinning out here a little bit, and you're looking at me like, where are you going with this one? But how do you make sure that the K through 12 is pushing the kids out ready for, and let's use this example. Are students and teachers in primary education, are they getting the right guidance to say, you know, manufacturing is not dead. Surely high-tech manufacturing is not dead. You need to consider this track. How do you do that?
Well, look, we are the beneficiary. This is of
so
a
you have
growing
a self-interest
population. Well, look, we benefit not just from the kids who come out of our local K through 12 community college. We're a destination. It's what's happening in the schools up in the Midwest and the Northeast who are educating people who come, and they now become a part of our workforce. And so, that's just a reality of it. I think there's a lot of confusion, Chris. I think we talk about the fact that manufacturing is coming back. Manufacturing is not what it used to be, and yet you put a group of white-collar professionals together, and how many of them are really genuinely talking to their children about manufacturing jobs? We still have in I think, a prevailing sense that a 4-year degree is the way to go. And we're struggling, whether it's through debates over the Common Core curriculum. We struggle over, do you, at some point in a K through 12 career, do you at some point pick and choose? Some kids are headed to college, some are not, so let's go in parallel tracks. We've done that before. It was politically incorrect, and we've gotten away from it. Now it almost sounds like we want to go back. So I think we have a little schizophrenia around whether we really mean what we say on this subject.
Right, and to Bob's point there, in both of our states, the middle skill jobs, which are the jobs that require certification higher than a high school diploma or GED, and less than a 4-year degree, that's 50% of the jobs in our two states right now. So you ask specifically, what are we doing with the K through 12 arena? Well, in South Carolina, we started an effort called Transform SC. That's a grassroots, starting with the schools themselves, around best practices, to try to get at two things. We're at the national average now, about the national average in terms of graduation, but that's still 25% of our students aren't graduating. So if we're ever going to get that workforce, we've got to get that up. Secondly, we in the technical colleges in South Carolina, and having worked in the community college system in North Carolina, I know this number is even higher. We spend $21 million a year on remediating students who come to us not prepared to take the first college course. So some of the goals of Transform SC is, one, to get the graduation rate to 90% across the state, and secondly, to decrease that number from 21 million down to just a couple of million. That will make a huge difference, because then we can spend that time on directing those students there to get through programs quickly, to get out to the workforce. And this whole issue of trying to have the counselors and teachers and parents understand about these jobs and about these great jobs that exist, and the fact that it doesn't require necessarily a 4-year degree to get a great paying job. And I can show you job after job in 4 industries and 4 clusters just in the Midlands of South Carolina that pay on an average of over $70,000 a year, with a certificate up to a 2-year associate degree.
You know, Dr. Harris Pastides from USC was on this program last week and wasn't quite as eager to give up that, not everybody needs a 4-year degree thing. But he couched it in some good comments. But my point is this. Okay, so we've got a couple minutes left. And you're right, Bob. Some of this stuff is very confusing, and it's a bit schizophrenic, and it's hard to follow, Dr. White, about all of these moving parts. Cheryl Stanton, head of the South Carolina Department of Employment and Workforce, was on this program, and she said her top priority was to figure out how to create a statewide unified strategy for workforce development. Does North Carolina need a unified approach?
Absolutely. And K through 12, the community colleges, and the universities need to be coordinated in that approach.
What keeps them from doing that?
The tradition and the way they've gone about it. They haven't necessarily talked to each other. Governor McCrory, in his inaugural address, talked about the need to bring them together, and so I think he's made that a priority. But you're talking about a lot of turf, and you're talking about a lot of status quo that you have to fight through. Austin, Texas, not on a state level, but the community of Austin has adopted a simple goal of increasing the number of kids who go on beyond the 12th grade to whatever level. And so that's comprehensive. It brings in the community college, it brings in the university system, and I think there's probably something to be learned there.
30 seconds left.
Yes.
What is keeping South Carolina from a unified strategy across the platform?
Well, I think we're headed toward that now. Cheryl and I, Jim Reynolds, who's been on this show, and Otis Rawls, we're all saying we've got to sit down now and put together this unified plan on workforce. I don't think there's anything standing in the way. We just got to get together, both at the 4-year university level, the technical colleges in South Carolina, along with the K through 12, along with the business community. I think someone like Cheryl can bring this together and bring us all together, because the workforce in the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce is saying this is what we need to do.
Thank you. Dr. White, that'll be the last word. Thank you for being on the program. I know we had you scheduled during one of the major storms, the winter storms in the Carolinas, and you were nice enough to give us another chance, so thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me back.
Thank you. And Bob, always good to see you. Good luck with everything going on in Charlotte. We'll be praying for you.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Good night. Till next week.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.com.